And let's see our final Make a Difference presentation.
My name is Stephanie Teskey. I'm a livestock officer for the Arizona Department of Agriculture, and I'm also a 6th generation rancher from the Dugas and Sycamore ranches. Impacts of recreation affect my life both personally and professionally. It's something that I have to deal with. I live in a very rural area, so I have to coexist with a lot of recreators. That means UTV riders, campers, hunters, hikers, you name it, it's public land and we share it. And our ranches coexist with that. In addition, with my professional capacity, we receive a lot of law enforcement complaints regarding recreation and some of the negative impacts that we face. And we'll get into some more details there about what exactly I'm talking about, specific cases there. And I can say that within the last year, our call volume for recreation-related crime has almost tripled. A lot of that being due to COVID. This was an issue that Ellen and I had talked about before COVID. We started our project before that happened. And then when everybody kind of got locked down, they started utilizing public land even more. So I'll let Ellen introduce herself and we'll move from there.
So my name's Ellen Parrish and I'm a resident of Mormon Lake. And like Stephanie said, this issue of recreation affects us both personally, and I'm sure all of you are feeling the effects in your rural communities as well. In my role as Vice President of Diablo Trust, I'm directly interacting with ranchers in the Mormon Lake area. As my volunteer work as an emergency medical technician, our call volume and the severity of our calls has just blown up over the last year for sure, but we've been seeing increases over the last several years. I'm the organizer of the Mormon Lake Advisory Group, in which I bring together elected officials, county officials, and community members to address issues that are specifically related to our small community of Mormon Lake. And as a commissioner for the Coconino County Parks and Rec Department, of course, recreation is our major issue, and we're dealing with higher use and greater impact there as well. So some of the common issues that we're seeing, like I said, the severity and the variety of emergency calls that we're seeing in our rural areas. Unfortunately, this picture is the result of speed and careless driving. This UTV was loaded with 7 individuals. Most of them were children, all seriously injured. Some of these accidents are so remote that we can't get ambulances to these people. We're utilizing helicopter services more and more. And those folks are collaborating with us and can corroborate that their call volume and the severity of their calls is greatly increased over the last 12 to 16 months. The second picture shows what we're seeing more and more. Trash left behind by people who are recreating. You're all aware, rural waste disposal, we don't all have waste management that shows up to our front door. In a lot of areas, waste management isn't coming and emptying the dumpster at all. Dumpsters aren't an option. We're using county transfer stations or hauling the the trash long distance to the dump.
So here's some more common issues that we see. For example, that first picture, people don't think that they have to stay on the road. So they just drive wherever they want. And the problem with what that happened there, you said, oh, well, just one person drove through there. Now that one person has driven through there, everybody that comes down there thinks that's a road. And before too long, now that becomes an established trail or road that wasn't supposed to be there. It damages habitat for wildlife. It destroys grass, native plants, and whatnot. The second picture, I don't know if you noticed right off the bat, but something's not quite right with that bottom cow. She has an arrow through her head. I think that a black cow doesn't look anything like an elk or a deer to me, so that's pretty obvious that it was intentional. Ranchers really struggle with this one. Most of our call volume at the Department of Agriculture with crime-related recreation stuff is vandalism to livestock and livestock loss. We find countless cattle just shot, and the problem is the Arizona Department of Agriculture only has 8 officers for the entire state. So when we get those calls, we're stretched pretty few and far between, and this happens in really remote areas. And you consider the loss, that one heifer, she did have to be euthanized. That was up around the Payson area. The rancher had to find her and humanely euthanize her. And the value associated with that animal is not just her own value, but the value of the calves that she'll have in the future. Here's another example of some other issues that we see on public land. You see that these petroglyphs have been tagged. That it's hard to put a price on that kind of damage. And then you see this dirt road that is typically passable. People like myself, and I'm sure many of you live down dirt roads, and that's my access in and out of my home and how I get to work. And when people treat it like that, I mean, now I need four-wheel drive to get in and out of my home. And here you can see, I know specifically out at Dugas where I live, this isn't where this picture is, but the traffic, it's like the Daytona 400. I mean, they're going 1,000,000 miles an hour through residential areas. Cattle get hit, horses get hit, people get hit on the roads all the time. There's the dust pollution. This affects wildlife. It disturbs the wildlife, livestock alike. And then you see this other picture where gates get left open. And you consider the time that it's going to take. If there's animals that are supposed to be in that pasture, that may be their only water. Somebody leaves the gate open, the animals get on the wrong side of that road. The gate gets closed later, and they may not have access to water, and you're going to be in big trouble. And like I said, with the big scapes of land that we're dealing with, it's hard to keep an eye on that much land when there's only a few of you.
So we went to work on this issue, not because it was a Project Central assignment, but because it affects us both personally, daily, and it couldn't wait. So we took our COVID break and we all went home. Stephanie and I stayed hard at work with this recreation working group. We've put together a diverse collaborative group of state, federal, and local agencies, representatives. We currently have over 18 different agencies, organizations, and local, ranchers and private citizens, including businesses and local fire departments. We're currently having bi-monthly meetings on Zoom. We learned how to do that really quickly. And we're planning a recreation summit for August 12th, where we will have all our agency personnel, our local citizens, our ranchers, our recreators come together and present the data that we've collected. With a large questionnaire went out in early this year, asking our collaborators what are the issues they're dealing with in their individual jobs and what can be done to help them. So can this working group bring together some resources that can help solve this problem? So that summit will happen August 12th of 2021. I'd love to see you all there if you can come up to Flagstaff. We're hoping our goal is that this recreation working group is a pilot program and creates a format for something that can be implemented across the state and then hopefully across the Southwest. Neither Stephanie and I have the time or energy to spin our wheels and create something that only solves our own problems. We're interested in addressing this on a larger issue and solving problems throughout the Southwest.
So some of the challenges that we face is enforcement issues. So like a lot of what we've talked about, it's already illegal. That's not the problem. But there's a lot of interagency communication issues. For example, the Arizona Department of Ag doesn't always talk to the sheriff's office. The sheriff's office doesn't always talk to Arizona Game and Fish. And there's a lot of different jurisdictions there. So that moves on to that, where the Game and Fish can cite for certain violations, whereas the Arizona Department of Agriculture specializes in livestock related crime. And a lot of these recreation issues are more than that. With the sheriff's departments, they don't always know that the Department of Agriculture even exists or who to call for cases like this. When they see a shot cow or a fence that's been cut, they don't really know how to address it. Like I talked about earlier, it's a big staffing issue, especially the Department of Agriculture is very short-staffed as far as law enforcement officers are concerned. I know Game and Fish is a similar situation, and the sheriff's office is even more strapped because they've got all of the metropolitan areas within their jurisdiction. And you're talking about some of these rural areas where it could take them several hours to get in and out to take a report on that. They don't always have the resources to actually access these areas. A lot of them are 4-wheel drive. These are places that people are taking the UTVs that you may not be able to get a passenger car into, or a patrol vehicle for that matter. And then there's a lot of training issues like we talked about. With livestock related crime, it's not very commonly known with the sheriff's department or with Game and Fish. And then same with the Game and Fish violations, that's a more specialized law enforcement. So some of the possible solutions to address that is I'm putting together an AZ Post class. All police officers in the state of Arizona are required to have an AZ Post certification. So we've got standardized training. So I'm putting together an AZ Post class to provide to multiple agencies to kind of collaborate that interagency communication.
So moving forward, we're at the point where we're starting to meet with statewide organizations to promote consistent messaging and consistent education throughout the state. That's been identified as one of the major problems, that different areas in the state and different agencies in the state have different laws and different messages related to recreation. Working in conjunction with the Arizona Trail Association, we hope to create an ambassador program because the data shows that peer-to-peer, face-to-face contact with someone who recreates like you do is the best way to modify behavior. So law enforcement plays a role, but getting hikers out on the trails that can share information about how to dispose of your waste. And for the OHV community, what roads are acceptable to drive on, what areas are closed, and why. There's a discussion about legislative solutions, of course, and that will develop over time, I'm positive, but that's just one component. Consistent messaging, educational materials, community-based outreach are going to be the key here. Funding from the state parks and OHV is, they have got a lot of money and less people applying for that money, so that they've already volunteered to help out and pay for a tremendous amount of signage and printed material to launch this program.
So what we need to move forward from this, like we talked about the legislative solutions, a lot of these laws are really restrictive. And there needs to be some work done to fix those to help law enforcement officers actually be able to pursue these cases and be able to charge people with some of these issues. We're not against recreation. We're all about multiple use on public lands, and we enjoy being able to share that. We're all conservationists and ranchers and recreators ourselves and enjoy that and want to just protect public lands for many generations to come so that everybody can utilize them in a safe way that benefits everybody.
Thank you. I'll take your questions.